All your favorite wrestling shows rolled into one. Welcome to the We Book It podcast. Let's start the show.
Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the AEW Recap Show. I am your host, Coach, and I thank you all once again for joining me. I want to ask you guys a favor tonight. I want you to give me a little bit of leeway here because this is my first time producing by myself. So we had a little bit of an issue to get started, but we're live now. So if something comes up, don't blame me all the time. Okay. Make sure I can still give me some leeway. All right. Just give me a little bit of time. All right. So let's jump right into the AEW recap. We are on the go home show of Dynamite tonight as the pay-per-view Redemption is coming up this Sunday. And could AEW rebound after a very lackluster Dynamite last week? Let's go ahead and let's jump right on in. So we kick things off right away with a TNT Championship match between Kevin Knight and Darby Allin. Knight was hesitant to get into the ring to start the match, but Allin jumped on him, and that started a brawl at ringside, including a dive from the top rope into the timekeeper's area. And finally, they entered the ring, and they started the match. Knight kept the brawl going, sending Allin into the barricade off the ramp, followed by catapulting the face of Allin into the steel steps, which was a very, very nasty-looking spot. To no surprise, this busted open Darby Allin, but knowing Allin, he refused to quit, hitting Knight with a coffin drop from the top rope, and that sent us into the commercial break. Back from the commercial break, we had a little bit of a bump on the referee, so the referee was knocked down, and then as Kevin Knight was going to use the championship belt, Allin caught him with the Scorpion Death Drop, but before Allin could hit the coffin drop, it was a coast-to-coast and UFO splash hit by Knight to retain the title as the ref recovered just in time. So I just want to say, I guess I shouldn't ask or bring this one up too. Afterwards, the Don Callis family came out and celebrated with Kevin Knight, even though Knight said that he can do everything without them. That brought out a little bit of Kyle Fletcher's mean side of saying that don't bite the hand that feeds you kind of thing. It was weird how they did that, but I liked what Knight did. He was kind of justifying his own self, basically telling Kenny Omega that he will just be by himself. There will be no interference on Sunday's match. So that was a nice touch there. And of course, Fletcher being a little bit upset because also Kevin Knight had broken the TNT Championship defense record that was held by Kyle Fletcher. So a little bit of teasing there on possibly a feud in the future with Fletcher and Knight, but we'll have to see what happens there. Well, in our next match, we had Fletcher and Okada stay out as they took on Bandido, and Brody King. This was a decent back and forth matchup. Bandido nearly caught Fletcher with the 21-plex, but Fletcher held the ropes and then hit a half-and-half suplex, only for Bandido to throw Fletcher into the air for a faceplant near fall. King then set up a frog splash on Fletcher for another near fall. Okada made the save, and then accidentally hit, or Fletcher accidentally hit Okada with the 21 plex, and that allowed Bandido and King to follow up and get the win. It was a little sloppy at times, but this match, I really liked the commentary on this match. It talked up all four men, that they were kind of in different parts of their career and that they were just meshing so well together. I will say Okada was not involved as much as Fletcher, but when he did get in, he made his spots count. And it was more of his counters that stood out to me for that with Okada. I thought it was interesting that Okada did not look that upset about hitting Fletcher. But then when Fletcher woke up, he played the "oh, I'm so sorry" card and then just kept on kind of being himself. So it was an okay match, but just not as memorable as I think it could have been. I definitely think if this was on a pay-per-view, I think it would have been a much better match. And I think if they got more time too, they could have done better. All right, we get to our next segment, which is Mick Foley coming out to set up the face-to-face between Thekla and Willow Nightingale. And the Toxic Spider promised to beat the poison out of Willow and show the darkness that Willow has behind that smile. Willow questioned if she was doing this just because she knew that she was too small to go up against Nightingale. Of course, this let a brawl break out. The Toxic Spider used her glove and the microphone to hurt Willow, but Willow was the last one standing after hitting a nice little... I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a spear or a clothesline. It was kind of a mix of both, but she did a good job kind of selling it. So execution-wise in this segment felt bleh. But the storytelling of it, I think, is interesting because could we be looking at Willow Nightingale turning heel? I think that's the interesting part here, especially if the Toxic Spider wins. I think that makes it very intriguing. So I think while the execution wasn't there, the storytelling of it is there, and I think this match is going to be a fantastic match, possibly one that could steal the show. And I know that's saying something when you have Omega and Knight battling for the championship. I think these women could steal the show. Also, Mick Foley just looked very awkward there. This is new for him, so let's give him a chance. But he just looked very, very awkward as he was doing the promo stuff with the two women. But like I said, execution, not the best. Storytelling, though, very, very good, and it has me very intrigued for this Sunday. All right, we get to our next match, which is the Switchblade, Jay White, taking on Clark Connors. And White kind of toyed with Connors to start the match, even threatening an early Blade Runner, but Connors fought free and turned the tide with a spear out of the ring onto the ramp, and that sent us into the commercial break. Connors was in control for most of the match until he tried another spear that White dodged, sending Connors into a steel chair. There was a lot of back and forth again, and then as Connors went for another spear, this time White reversed it into a guillotine that knocked him out and forced a referee stoppage. After the match, Finlay grabbed his shillelagh and blasted White, but the rest of the Bang Bang Gang arrived to make the save and send the dogs back to the locker room. the pace was fast for this, and that's not a bad thing. The two of them really got time to. I mean, we got to remember Jay White. This is his first singles match since returning from injury. So the fact that the pace was how it was, I think, is a good sign for Jay White. It wasn't crisp, but it was effective. And again, I loved the counters that White was doing, the in-ring psychology that he was performing to really get Connors to get in his own ego, I guess, to say that he can take on White. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Nothing too crazy about this match, but I still think it was a solid match going forward. Also, just beforehand, we also had Switchblade and Juice Robinson challenge the Dogs to a double chain match at Redemption. So we'll find out on Collision if that comes to fruition or not. All right. We get to our next match, which is a no disqualification match for the Women's World Tag Team Championship between Divine Dominion and the Sisters of Sin. So this match, first off, I had no idea that this was a no disqualification match when I first watched it, or when I first turned it on. I was very, very intrigued by this, especially since I'm a big Julia Hart fan. Not going to lie. I think she is a great wrestler. I wish she would have a singles run here, but I do like how after the injury, she's kind of back into the tag team division for now. Anyways, the Sisters of Sin started with kendo sticks and kind of slowed down Bane and Cross, but it wasn't for long. They battled back using pretty much every weapon available to hurt each other. Sky Blue got busted open from getting blasted with the steel chair. Hart and Blue then turned the tide back with a double powerbomb on Bane through a table on the ramp. And then once Bane recovered, she came out, chokeslammed Blue through a table on the floor. Hart tried to take down Bane with an octopus stretch, but Bane reversed it into a spinning tombstone, followed by From Heaven to Hell to seal the win. I mean, what more could you ask for in this event for a no disqualification? This is what a no disqualification match needs to be. It needs to be a little bit hardcore. It needs to be a little bit on the bloody side, and I think these women delivered very much. And the storytelling, once again, in the ring was great. And I think that is one thing that AEW, the women's division, does so well, is tells the story in the ring, even if their execution isn't great. But this execution here, I thought, was fantastic because you had Hart and Blue kind of undersized against Bane and Cross, and they were using every weapon possible to try and get the advantage, and it worked for a time, but eventually just the dominance, the strength of Bane and Cross eventually was too much for Hart and Blue to do anything. So Bane and Cross retain the women's World Tag Team Championship. And, Sky Blue, credit to you for blading and getting cut open. Good for you. And that's one of the reasons why I think the women do such a tremendous job for AEW. All right. We get to our main event, and it is a trios match between the teams of Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, and members of the Don Callis family, Hichiro, Brian Cage, and Jake Doyle. You think of this as especially on the babyface side of the dream match with Omega, Ospreay, and Mox. You think this is perfect, but the storytelling was obviously there was a struggle. Ospreay and Moxley worked really well together, but Omega very hesitant to work with Moxley, even to a point to where Omega was going to tag Ospreay to come back in, but Ospreay refused and said, "You have to tag Mox in." And it was the most unenthusiastic tag in that I've seen before, where Omega literally just, if Moxie's hand is right here, Omega literally just went that. Not even make a slap. It was just a put his hand on hand and then walked away. So then Moxley came in, and then Doyle and Cage really started taking over for the Don Callis family as Moxley was dumped into the corner. But then finally, once the faces got their runs going, we had a V-trigger and hidden blade combination from Omega and Ospreay that sealed the pinfall for the victory. However, after the match, Omega and Moxley argued until the Young Bucks arrived, and that started a brawl. Eventually, Kenny Omega was left in the ring after taking down RPG Vice, but then Kevin Knight blasted him with the TNT Championship belt from behind and over the ropes. The show ended with the Jet holding a bleeding Omega with both championships in hand. Basically solidifying that Omega is going to win, and I think we all kind of knew that, but you know the rules. If you touch the title before the pay-per-view, if you're the challenger, you're probably not going to win. But also, you don't want to ruin Omega versus Ospreay that's coming up at All In. Again, the storytelling for this match was great. I loved that you had that kind of disconnect with Moxley and Omega, and Ospreay trying to play devil's advocate for both sides, and it just wasn't working despite them getting the win. But the match itself, very sloppy. Very, very sloppy. There wasn't a lot. Like I said, the only memorable thing was Omega's tag into Moxley, and that's usually not good if you only just remember that one thing from this match. So I was a little disappointed with how the main event went for this show. But if we're looking at it as a whole, I think there was some really, really good things. First off, way better than last week's show. Way better. Knight versus Allin, and as well as the Women's World Tag Team Championship match was, they were both great. The Women's World Championship picture, despite being a little awkward in execution, storytelling-wise, still very good. I think the biggest problem for this upcoming pay-per-view it'll be resolved at Redemption, because Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay is too much of a conclusion to believe anyone is challenging Omega right now. Knight honestly should be continuing his feud with Allin, while Omega, Ospreay, and Moxley could have done a team up at Redemption. That's just me being more nitpicky about it. Again, because it's predictable of who's going to win, I think this could have been a save. But I also appreciate that they want to show a world title match at the pay-per-view. So I see both ends of the spectrum here, but it's going to all be resolved after Sunday, and then we can finally look forward to Ospreay versus Omega at All In. So a very solid show, much better than last week, and I'm looking forward to how Redemption is going to be on Sunday. That's going to do it for me here at the We Book It podcast and the All Elite recap. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. There's a couple of comments in here. I appreciate you guys commenting. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all of our content here at the We Book It podcast. We have shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we have our big show on Sunday. So please keep commenting and tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to see from us. Tell us what you don't like from us, because then we'll even talk about that some more. We want to hear your voices because you are our fans and our listeners. We want to hear from you on this. Again, thank you to everyone for watching. And thank you all for hanging with me, because this was my first time producing the show, and I think I did okay. So we'll see how this goes into the future. I'm definitely going to keep trying this. But thank you to everybody for tuning in, and I will see you next week on another edition of AEW Recap, and it'll be the post-Redemption show. So you got to admit some things are going to be happening as we build towards All In at Wembley coming up next month. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next week.